Hello and welcome to the Chapels Royal at Her Majesty's Tower of London for Tuesday the 14th of September 2021. This is our thought for the day, for this day or this week. I thought it would be interesting just to reflect a little while on the concept of integrity. It's one of those interesting words. It's a noun, an abstract noun, which doesn't have an adjective to go with it. Redness has red. Goodness has good. Integrity doesn't have, well, it has integral, but we don't really use it in the same way. So let's think about that for a moment. If you're an engineer or whatever, you might talk about the integrity of an aircraft. What does that mean in simple language? It means it's all there, it's got all its bits, and also that they're functioning in harmony. The integrity of a spacecraft, the same. You want to make sure it doesn't have any holes in it to let the air out, and so forth. But we don't then talk about the plane being integral or the spacecraft being integral. Don't know why not. We could do, but we don't. So we then use the word about people. We say that people have integrity. And this opens up a whole panoply of interesting thoughts. Now, from the physiological point of view, you want people to have integrity of their bodies. You don't want them to be missing any bits or any bits to be damaged or injured. But if we start talking about the mind and the character, which are different things, then the word integrity takes on different meanings. So let's think about the mind. If you say somebody's mind lacks integrity, then you're implying that they are losing something. They're losing control, that the parts of their mind are not working together in harmony. We hark back then to the thoughts of aircraft and spacecraft by analogy. If we come to character and we talk about integrity, the simple definition of wholeness, of there being nothing missing, isn't really what we're talking about. If you say somebody has integrity, well, the implication of that is you trust that person. You would trust that person perhaps with your life. And then again, we don't say, oh, I know this person. He's really integral, you know. Why don't we? I don't know, but we don't. It's odd that we don't really, we say trustworthy. So we use those words. We don't use an adjective related to the abstract noun integrity. But it's a really fundamental concept, in fact, in all of our human relations. And the people we deal with, the people that we rely on, the people who work to us, for us, the people who rely on us. Integrity is absolutely fundamental, it seems to me. You could, I suppose, say it's made up of different things. We've said trustworthiness. How about predictability, consistency? Although that would mean people never ever changed, and you can change and still have integrity. So it all gets a little bit slippery. And yet it's very important to us. And to say that somebody else lacks integrity is to say something pretty severe about that person. And you'd better know why you're saying it. You'd better have the evidence to back it up, because otherwise you might end up in court, or certainly losing a friend. So a few years ago, I was working in an environment where it was very important that people should be trustworthy. And the word we used was integrity. Does this person have integrity? And people were asked to make judgments about this. Has this person got integrity? And at one point, we thought, well, let's call into aid the science of psychology. Because after all, psychologists look at how people are, how they're made up, how they behave. whether they behave predictably, whether they behave consistently, they behave honestly. And that's not a word we haven't used yet, but of course, that's absolutely fundamental to the idea of integrity. Do you have to have integrity to be honest? Do you have to have honesty to have integrity? Pays your money and takes your choice, but they're very closely related. So I found myself one day talking to a very distinguished psychologist. I could say a successful psychologist, which is a funny thing to say, but he ran a company which provided psychological services to some fairly major institutions, and they kept re-employing him. So I think we could say he was successful. He was clearly saying things which those clients found useful in their business. And we've been talking for a while about psychological instruments that one could use to ask people to answer questions on questionnaires, and one could then score them and come to some kind of view of their integrity. At which point I realized I'd been talking for some time and we hadn't defined our terms. So I said to this distinguished psychologist, what for you is integrity? And I sat back and I waited to hear some lengthy and learned scientific discourse, some of which might well go right over my head, but I was prepared to take the risk. And he thought for a moment, and he looked out of the window, which is always a good thing when you're thinking, which is what I'm doing now. And he said, oh yeah, integrity. Doing the same thing, whether or not you're being observed. Doing the same thing, whether or not you're being observed. That's a pretty good definition of integrity, in the sense that we want to use it about people. What are the theological implications of this? Well, it seems to me that if we think in any part of our lives we're not being observed by God, then we are kidding ourselves. We are always being observed by God's all-seeing eye. But being human and being fallible, we often think, we kid ourselves, that we're not being observed. And so it's a really important question. Do we behave the same way, whether or not we're being observed? That seems to me to be something really very helpful to use with children when they're growing up, who often have a rather crude sense of what is right and wrong. It may be as simple as, well, the important thing is not to get caught. That's what really matters. And I think we would disagree with that. We would say, no, the important thing is to do the right thing. And actually what we mean is to do the right thing, whether or not you're being observed. And in our own lives with other people, we're often asked to make decisions, we're asked to say things, we're asked to keep quiet about things, we're asked to do things. And it seems to me quite a good rule of thumb to say to oneself, if I were to do this, is this something I would rather other people did not know about? Is this something I would like to keep secret? Because if it is, then if you put any faith at all in that interesting definition of integrity, you would have to admit that maybe your own integrity is not quite perfect. Which brings me to another thought, and that is that actually integrity can't really be relative, can it? It's like uniqueness. You can't be very unique, you can't be fairly unique, you can't be rather unique, you can be unique or not unique. And integrity seems to me to be rather the same. You can have integrity or you can lack integrity, but you can't have 90% integrity. Doesn't really make sense. So as we consider our lives, our interactions with others, as we consider that great injunction to love our neighbor as ourselves, then it seems to me that just bearing in mind that little simple definition of integrity is quite useful. So we ask ourselves all the time as we do something, as we say something, as we don't say something, as we decline to do something, am I secretly hoping I'm not being observed in this action or inaction? Because if that's the case, then I need to sit down and think, what does that say about my integrity? So I leave that thought with you, and I'd welcome any comments on it. Meanwhile, have a very good week, and there will be another thought for the day here next week from Canon Roger Hall.